Jerry Caviston, Vice President of Global Sales at Archive 360. Welcome to the download. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you for having me. How are you?
I'm doing all right, thanks. And how's your day going?
Going very well, very well. For Monday, I guess we're doing pretty good.
Yeah, I said Monday for you, Tuesday for me. I can tell you that Monday night's not bad. Tuesday's actually looking all right too. And it's interesting because here we are in this global world. Normally we're doing this on a couch and we're in a global world right now and it looks like we're both in the same office. So that's kind of cool too. And both in New York.
I love what you've done to the place there.
Jerry, you've been in this space for a long time, right? If I look at the history of where you've worked at EMC, you've worked at HP in the information management space, you've done stuff at Iron Mountain. Like, information management has been clearly core to you. Why don't you tell me a little bit about what brought you out of the other locations, the other organizations you've been working for, and now at Archive 360? Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, sure. So I actually have worked with the co-founders Bob and Tibby for many years. I've known them for a long time. And actually, when they started the company, I was an advisor to them and gave them some input, and have been with them the long way, the whole route really, but just doing other things. And then a couple of years ago, they invited me to join them and help them take this from what started out as really a pure services company to a software subscription-based platform as a service offering. And I jumped at the opportunity. I think the time was right, the product is right, the market. I just felt the convergence of a lot of these things coming together. So I joined them about 2 years ago, specifically to try to build out this the Archive to Azure practice.
Okay, so tell me, given you've been an advisor with them for a long time, tell me a little bit about the Archive 360 story.
Oh, so Archive 360 started. So a lot of these us all worked together years ago in the what I call the legacy, the original enterprise archiving place came around. It was driven in the financial world out of New York City. We were all the same company called Mimosa. We got acquired by Iron Mountain, Autonomy, HP. It was a fun run. So they started out purely as a services company to migrate these old legacy applications from whatever app it was into 365, enabling cloud, enabling 365. And literally, customers are a customer-driven organization. A lot of folks were saying, hey, I have regulations, or I have too much data, or I have data that, didn't come from Microsoft. Why would I put it back into Microsoft? And they were asking for alternatives. And we built a practice around building a platform for this unified archive within Azure to leverage the cloud services. So now you can leverage the machine learning, the AI, the security, all the tools that are wrapped around the Azure services. You can leverage those for the enterprise.
So if I whittle that down, it started as archives and archive migrations and migrating archive data into 365, and that's been a really sort of exciting market. But obviously, as time goes on, that market depletes. But there were things like journal archive migrations, which proved to be challenging with Microsoft's licensing construct and the fact that Microsoft is not really journaling per se in 365. But I think the thing that I really like about what Archive 360 did was saw the broader picture, which is, hey, it's not just about mail archives, it's about all the legacy data. And I've been in this data storage game for way too many years than I care to think about. And I've been, we used to do data profiling back in late 90s. We were talking about profiles of data and why are you keeping data on expensive storage? And that was the whole introduction of SATA, et cetera. Take it off expensive storage, put it on more cost-effective storage. And now it's, okay, I'm moving my data to the cloud. What do I do with this old data that I do need to keep? Because who knows if there's a compliance requirement or if there's a need for me to keep all of this data, but I don't want to keep it on expensive on-prem, and moving it to the cloud with lots of CPUs, et cetera. And there's so many different ways to do it, but talk a little bit to me about, what makes Archive 360's approach unique that managed to get you guys rocketing through the Gartner Magic Quadrant?
So there's a couple of things. One of the biggest things is we are truly a cloud native application. What I mean by that, it wasn't an on-prem app that we just ported up to the cloud through some VMs and just tried to run it in the cloud. It literally was built, as I mentioned earlier, within the cloud around these services, around the Microsoft Azure services. So we leverage the Cosmos DB, the Kubernetes. We leverage all these services. So we're actually, almost like an interface. You can anybody can put data in the cloud, but what can you do that? So we're almost like an orchestration layer where we enable you to actually take advantage of some of the smarts and the engineering that's in the cloud and really take, a lot of efficiencies from a cost perspective, data analytics perspective. There's a number of opportunities there for folks.
So if I'm if I'm an organization, I've got a lot of legacy data, and that data could be structured data in some databases, it could be unstructured data, it could be mail data, it could be my backups, etc. All of that can go into the Archive to Azure platform, yeah?
Yes, absolutely, Ronnie. It is a unified archive. One of the things that we see, a couple of things that we see happening is the data growth is just continuing to get out of control with organizations. Another thing we see happening, we talked about email. Messaging is, depending on which statistics you believe, is only about 20-25% of a corporation's overall data that they have and have to manage. So you've got 75-80% of the data that's not even sitting in the messaging environment. So they need to manage that. We've seen silos of data without the organization. And then on top of it, another trend, when I first started in this space, everybody wants to save everything forever. If you even mentioned, deletion, no, it's got to be warm. It's got to be, we save it forever. Now people are talking about disposition. So there's regulations. You have to get rid of data at some time. It could be you're exposed if you keep data around too long potentially. So now the disposition is critical as well. So we really looked at it from a holistic approach, saying, okay, you've got all this data, consolidate these silos of data, get intelligent information out of this data, be able to manage it, keep what you need, get rid of what you don't need, and then set your policies and everything at a corporate level rather than at a department or division, strung across the organization. You really take control of your data. So that's been a big driving factor.
And as the data makes its way into the platform, it all gets indexed and can have metadata attached to it, which makes it infinitely searchable, yeah?
Yeah, that's another kind of a unique thing about our platform is we have an entire ingestion process. So we call it pipeline. So we take the pipeline, we validate the data, we make sure the data integrity is there. If necessary, we provide a chain of custody for that data. Once we do that, then we go ahead and index. So we do either a small index or a full text index to attachments or all the data as well. And then all of that information now is available for searching as well as policies. We're seeing now that the cloud enables you to do things for data sovereignty. For example, if this data needs to stay in the UK, we can store it based on its data type just in the UK. If it needs to stay in Australia, we can save that data just in the cloud in Australia and be able to set the policies around both the data type, the information. So there's a lot of very intelligent things you can do with the information once you leverage this tool.
And because it's sitting in Azure, and it's basically ending up ultimately it's stored in Azure Blob Storage, yeah. And so then therefore all of the services that are otherwise available in Azure become available over the data set that's now sitting in the Archive to Azure platform.
Exactly. With a very nice, clean user interface, the ability to import your taxonomies, your policies, all of that information as well. Also the ability to tier the storage. It might sit in blob storage. You may, as your age data off, maybe you want to put it in cool storage or cold storage. So you can actually tier the data off, kind of like the old, TSM model from years ago, if you remember that. So
absolutely, I do. And I think one of the things that I found, we've been working with Archive 360 for many years, and you're super excited about being, your exclusive representative over here in the ANZ region, and also, taking your solutions to market globally. One of the things that I found that made this solution even more unique, and there's a lot of things we've spoken about that make Archive 360 unique, but the thing that I really liked is that the data that goes in is in native format. So the customer still owns the data. Like all too often have I seen data go into managed archive platforms, and then there's a whole egress cost of getting it out because it's stored in some proprietary format that the customer can't actually do anything with. And the customer actually ultimately gets beholden to that archive vendor because I can't move it because they're going to charge me a fortune to get it out. So with your platform though, it's native format. The customer can do with it as and when they will, whatever they please.
Exactly right. It's probably the closest thing I've seen to a future-proof that, since been in the industry for the last 30 plus years. Literally, if it comes in as a JPEG, we save it as JPEG. A Word doc, a PDF, it doesn't matter. No proprietary wrappers. It's stored in its format. If at any time, so it's very portable. It's a very Like I said, it's a very scalable solution because you leverage the infrastructure of the cloud. So as it grows, you can grow dynamically with it, predictably. It's also very portable. At some point in time, if you want to move this data from this, like I said, we started from the data, moving it into 365. And then folks are like, okay, maybe I don't need everything in 365. So it's very easy to export it or port it to other places as well. Export it potentially for case management or, if you have some legal reviews or something. So you can do a lot with it. We like to say it's your data, your control, your cloud. So it's very important.
That's right. Well, I think that's a critical point too. Your cloud. It's in the customer's Azure instance. It's not in a shared instance. So therefore, they control the security themselves, in addition to the security layers that you provide them.
Yes, and that's an important thing. Ronnie, some folks, it takes a while to understand. But once they grasp this really helps us, and they embrace the platform. Is if you're going to all of our competitors that I'm aware of are a SaaS offering. So it's a software as a service. It's a multi-tenant environment. Your data, even though they've got these walls around it, it's still shared with everybody else's data. If there's a breach there, that company, that SaaS provider, they own your crypto keys. They control your data. They control the access to the data, even though they provide you access. In this environment, what we do, it's in your cloud. You control your own crypto keys. You control your data. So the only person can be accessing the data is somebody within your organization that's authorized to do so. So it is a much different model than the traditional software as a service. This truly is a platform as a service where we're running this application within your Azure tenant. And by the end of this year, probably within your AWS tenant too is on the roadmap. So we do say we're cloud agnostic today. We're most heavily functional. I'll say the heaviest functionality within Azure, but we will have AWS by the end of the year as well, by Q4.
That's very exciting. I'm sure there's a number of organizations who have a multi-cloud strategy who ultimately may well want to see that sitting within the AWS platform. So that's really exciting news too. And security is a big thing. We see security's in the news all the time. Outside of it's in the customer's tenant and they own the keys, etc. What other type of security things that Archive 360 look at with the Archive 2 as your solution? What are some of the other areas that you guys take care of?
So there's some really important things. So security, way back when I was a crypto tech, I was in the United States Coast Guard. And I was actually a cryptologist way back at the beginning of my career. So security has always been very near and dear to me. But security is something we've seen over the last 12, 18 months just explode. It's part of every single conversation nowadays. So what we have a couple mantras. One is we are built on a zero trust model. It's an NIST standard. It's really a framework, a holistic approach to the methodology when deploying applications. And so what we look at two main points of security. It's the infrastructure security and the information security. So both of those we separate out as separate ways to protect your data and protect your infrastructure. And it's really important, again, going back to our competitors in a SaaS environment, you now are asking them to do everything for you versus controlling yourself. If you're using the cloud today as a corporation, you've already got your security policy set up, you've got your firewalls in place, and now you can leverage all of those. You're not trusting somebody else to do that. And then on top of it, leveraging either Microsoft Azure Key Vault or leveraging, we have a cloud security gateway. We enable you to even manage your own keys and rotate your keys as well. So there's an extra level of security there as well. So we're seeing every conversation, and telling the folks on my team, if you're not already engaged in security, ask the person you're talking to invite security, because they're going to get involved sooner or later. So the earlier we get them engaged, it's usually for the better.
And who are you finding as sort of your ideal clients? Where are you seeing, the discussions coming from majority of the time?
So the five we have we work very closely with Microsoft, and we have five kind of what they call superpower slides. Certain areas that we do really well. One of them obviously is the FSI, financial services. We have probably 4 out of the top 5 major banks, worldwide banks that are using our platform in some manner. So the financial services is huge. The other areas is the government. The federal government, we have a lot of the 3-letter agencies here in the U.S. as well in the UK, as well as even out in down there with you, where some of the government that we service as well. The life science, I say life sciences, and I broadly bundle in the pharmaceuticals as well as some of the Blue Cross Blue Shields, anybody that plays in that health services space, as well as another strong vertical for us. The other areas is state and local government. And again, both at a United States level as well as even though they're not called state and local, but even in other countries as well, UK, Europe, as well as Australia, New Zealand. So those are the main ones. And then the fifth one is typically any company that has any legal requirements whatsoever falls into this bucket. If they've any sort of requirement to maintain their data for any specific period of time. And when you look around, any publicly traded company, any large company, typically has some sort of regulations, whether to the shareholders or to the corporate governance. And so those are the areas that we do really well in most of our conversations.
And do you find most of your conversations are coming from a cost containment perspective, or from a risk mitigation, risk management perspective, or indeed something else?
No, that's a great question, Ronnie. So I think it starts out, what we're seeing the trend so far is it starts out in IT, is tasked, typically by maybe one of these other people from risk or from governance or from legal to find a solution. And so then they all they care about is, are there been tasked of, the servers coming up, we got to get rid of the storage platform. So they're just looking to solve maybe this one small problem. And then once you start engaging them and they understand that it's not a small problem, it impacts the entire organization, the other groups typically get involved, the risk, the compliance, the legal, the governance folks, and the security. So it typically starts as a conversation. Somebody may say, hey, we're closing down a data center and we just need to move some data to the cloud. And then all of a sudden it turns into, as you can imagine, a very large conversation with a lot of stakeholders. The key is typically...
Sorry, go on.
No, the key is to find out who the main stakeholder is in all this.
So you've got many different stakeholders. Could be legal, could be governance, risk and compliance. It could be IT. It could even be the board who's concerned about ensuring that data is managed appropriately, that it's accessible, that it's discoverable. And if an organisation doesn't want to discover through your platform, to your point earlier, they can extract and put it through the case management tool sets that they otherwise would have. But they get ubiquitous discovery with Archive to Azure as well, right? So anything in the platform can then be discovered, as opposed to having data sitting in, say, an archive platform for mail, and an archive platform for SharePoint, and an archive platform for Salesforce, or an archive platform for whatever the data type is. Once it's in Archive to Azure, it's eminently searchable across all of that data type.
Yeah, it's given the right permissions. Absolutely, yes. Correct.
Yeah. All right, so let's just pivot that. I mean, Archive 360, Archive to Azure, what a great success story that from an organizational perspective, what an outstanding set of value propositions that Archive to Azure has. So we have been working together for many, many years as two organizations, and sometimes, what I call in co-opetition with one another. When Archive 360 was really playing a lot more in that email archive migration, we do some projects together, we do some projects where we may compete with one another. And over the years, we've built a really strong relationship. And of course, the legacy, if you like, of how, the old Mimosa and autonomy, etc., that whole play, everyone in that space knows one another. So it's great to have had so many years of experience working together. And, we recently announced the Australia-New Zealand exclusive distributorship of the Archive 360 suite within Centra. So can you share a little bit about what made Archive 360 actually choose Centra to be that partner for them in Australia and New Zealand, and also to take it global?
Absolutely. So first of all, very excited about this partnership as well. Very, very excited. I think you're aware that I was the one that really driving it hard to get this done. So welcome. There's a number of reasons. One, as you mentioned, we've worked well together, but when we looked at Centra, it had to be a good fit. It's really the culture is an important part of the culture. It also is important, the technology, the people that understand what we're trying to accomplish here, that gets the big picture. I look at everybody on your team as an extension of our team. It's not two separate companies. I really see the lines blurred as to where, where our company ends or your guys, again, we're in this together. So you guys have the skill set, you bring tremendous amount of expertise, of relationships. So to me, I think it made sense. It was a very good fit for us to put this together from my perspective.
Yeah, we're super excited about it. We're talking to the market about it. We're talking with Microsoft. Microsoft obviously love it because it's in Azure. I think AWS will get excited about it as soon as there's an AWS value proposition. I think the Microsoft field teams really like it because their customers are calling out for solutions, and anybody who wants to leverage the Azure platform, this is a really fantastic way to do so. And to do so in their own tenancy. So if we talk,
I'm going to interrupt for 1 second. The the Microsoft, the Azure folks do love us. We were the number 3, I think for this year, I know for last year, driving Azure storages and services. So out of all the Microsoft thousands of partners that they have and people playing in that space, we drove the 3rd largest percentage there from a storage and service perspective within the cloud. So
what a fantastic statistic.
Yeah. We're really driving the adoption. So I didn't mean to cut you off, but what were you about to ask me something else?
No, that was a very valuable cutoff, I must say. I'm sure that the audience would be thrilled to hear that. I'm sure Microsoft will be thrilled to hear that you're touting the benefits that you're bringing to them and to their customers as they empower everyone on the planet, right? So the world turns upside down. There's no question, and there's it always does at varying times. Where are you seeing the market moving now? So you're seeing a tremendous growth in your organisation, hundreds of % per year. Where are you seeing it going?
So we're seeing it. At the moment, it doesn't seem like it's slowing down. The world it seems that over the past year and a half, that some of these projects people were talking about, they're now doing because they either have more time and or are forced to get into the cloud quicker. So I read a recent article about a CIO. They surveyed a bunch of CIOs, and the cloud transformation. A lot of them are saying it's just beginning. We haven't even scratched the surface of it from that perspective. So we see it continuing to grow. We see companies continue to want to control their own data, not to outsource the data into a third-party data center. We're seeing folks saying, "Hey, we can control it. It makes more sense." As we touched on earlier, security is a big thing that we're seeing as well. So we are seeing growth, equally, and coming back to why we partnered together. We're seeing a global expansion. We're part of Microsoft. They have a global geo expansion program, and it's just for me, it's impossible to try to. We're not big enough to scale where I can hire, teams of people all over the world. So to leverage, the teams that you've already built and have in place and the relationships, it just makes perfect sense. So. We continue. We hope to see the trends continue with the growth, especially with the data and the organizations, and it's been very exciting so far.
That's wonderful. Well, Jerry, what we haven't done today is spoken about anything that you might be passionate about outside of data management and data archiving, and I know that you are a passionate car enthusiast.
Yes, so, I've heard the same about you.
Yes, and I think somehow your car enthusiasm has you presented with more opportunities than that which I've been presented. So you have actually ridden or driven in a Formula One simulator that the F1 drivers actually learn to drive, or not that they don't need to learn, that they practice in. Is that right?
Yes, it is. I belong to called the Classic Car Club of Manhattan. There's also one in London, but they have a couple of pods, they call them, in there, and you can race against each other. You can race against yourself, learn new tracks, and it's really fun. If they weren't so expensive, I'd probably have one for my house, but they're probably about the price. I think one of them is about the price of my house, so that was prohibitive. So.
And that's a big statement because your house is in Manhattan, right? So that's a big statement in itself. And so if I was to say to you, Jerry, tell me your favorite car of all time, what would it be?
It would probably be, that's an impossible question, but I'm currently hooked on the early Shelby Mustangs, the ones that Shelby literally built themselves. I just watched Ford versus Ferrari. I just watched that for the 5th time the other night. My wife walks in, she's like, "You were just watching this yesterday." I'm like, "I know." So at the moment, it's the Shelby, the early Shelby. Just he changed the game. I mean, it changed everything back there.
100%.
But it's hard to say. But now I know I just alienated our the Ferrari, the Italian market, the Europe.
Well, we're talking two different cars too, right? We're talking muscle car versus Italian supercars. It's a little different, all based off similar premises. Obviously, they've both got an engine, but they're just a different drive and a different audience.
Yeah, no, I like that. It was a fun movie too. Good example.
It's a great movie. It's definitely a great movie. So if there's a car that you are working towards retiring to buy, would it be a Shelby? What would it be? What's the car that you say, I really want to get one of those in my garage?
So I'm actually going to share a very personal story here, and it's not going to answer your question. But when I was just starting my career, I always wanted a Porsche. Whether it was a Targa 911, didn't matter. And then finally, I'd saved enough money, and my wife's like, "You've earned it. Let's go buy you a Porsche." And we went to the dealership, and I test drove a bunch, and just knowing the fact that I could buy it, I ended up not buying it. I ended up saying, "You know what, I don't need it that much." So I think part of the challenge was just the chase. So, I think there's a lot of cars. If I had a Jay Leno type collection, if I could have, hundreds of these multi-million-dollar cars, that would be a different story. But today, I'm hooked on, like I said, I like the old American classics. I my old American muscle cars at the moment. But there's not one particular. If there was maybe a McLaren, I guess I'd say. Those are just amazing vehicles, a brand new McLaren. But where could I drive it, right? You lose your license in the first week, and then it sits in the garage. So
and you get to look at the car.
Exactly. So it's interesting.
Well, for me, the car that I do want to get at some point is a Porsche GT3 race spec.
Drove one. Not the race one, but we drove one at the car club on the track day. Absolutely amazing.
And that's all I want it for. I just want it to go to the track. That's it.
Actually, it's a little G-force. So this is how, I don't obviously own cars like that. That's a little gauge, the G-force gauge in there. I'm like naive. What is this? May I have to explain what that was? So, what a fun day that was, though. Yeah, that was interesting.
That's a beast of a machine. Well, Jerry Cavelston, thank you very much for taking the time out to join me on the download. It's been a pleasure having a conversation with you. Wishing you and Bob and Tibby a massive congratulations for the success you're having so far, and we're looking forward and excited to be a part of the future success story of Archive 360.
Ryan, thank you very much for having me. I'm looking forward to restrictions being lifted, getting back to normal, coming out there and sitting on the couch or being on your cooking show next time possibly.
Oh, I'd love to cook a meal with you.
Absolutely, great. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Jerry.